welcome back, everyone. Again, we're back with episode 5, Mina's Playbook, for understanding how entrepreneurship works in Calgary, Alberta. And I do think that a lot of what we've talked about here could actually apply to across Canada. So no matter where you're at, I think you will find something here useful. In episode 4, we talked about how do you build your advisory board. And I think Mina had a ton of really great advice there. And in this is the last episode, sadly. I want this to go on and on, honestly, Mina. I wish we could just have this thing where it's a recurring series. Maybe we'll have an Ask Mina series after we release this, where people just send in questions and you answer them. But we'll think about that. But we want to talk about how do you build systems and processes that set you up for growth. And I think this is a really good way next episode after talking about advisors. Because you build your advisors, that's good, but you also want to have a system in place so that when you get advice, you can basically put that advice to good use, And I think where I'm going to start with Mina is what system do you think a startup needs to have in place before you get to employee number 5? Because I find that people talk a lot about, there's this big thing about solo business and all that, even those people. But the point is what from your experience, what's the foundational set of systems you want to have as a startup founder who's trying to, get going and build something in Canada?
Love it. And I appreciate this question, Dozy. And this is, not to get on this, but I really appreciate what you're doing here, because this is one of those things that are under talked about. We don't talk about this too often, but I'm going to talk to you about very early stage startups, and I'll talk to you about your question in regards to, how do you create systems so that you can actually succeed as a newcomer from an entrepreneurial perspective, whether you're hiring your first 5 or 6 employees or you're starting off fresh. So starting off fresh. One of the things that I really appreciate about newcomers is the fact that we don't have an unlimited runway. And I'll talk a lot about runways as a key component to, folks who are trying to start up their entrepreneurial process. So when we can't afford chaos, when we can't afford to just take massive amount of risks, when we have families, when we have we're newcomers to this country, we don't have the network. This is all new to us. This is really important to get it right. And so let's try to figure out systems that actually help us to succeed. And one of the biggest things that I learned throughout my journey as an advisor is that 6-month runway is essentially what you want to look at. So what does that mean? When you're thinking about starting a business and you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to try to figure out how to make this work. 6 months is basically the most comfortable area where you can say that I can breathe. Now, it takes a long time to get to that 6-month runway where you can afford life, you can afford establishing revenues into the company. 6 months revenue takes a lot of work to get there. So just to begin, you want to think about forecasts. It's so important to kind of consider, okay, I've got this new idea. I'm going to start out this entrepreneurial journey. The forecast, why it's so important is because you can start to think about each individual customer that you're going to approach. If you don't have a firm idea of each individual customer that you're going to approach, and you can say that, hey, with, let's say 70% certainty that you can sell whatever product or service that you have to those particular individuals, then maybe you need to rethink your entrepreneurial journey. It's really, really important to understand that you're going to have direct line of sight into your first ideal customer profile. And if you don't have that, again, it's a process of reestablishing what your business plan is, because those forecasts are going to be absolutely critical. One of the things that is under talked about in terms of the newcomer community as well, if you're establishing your own new service or program and you're a new entrepreneur, is this: taxes. One of the things that you really want to make sure as you kind of think about your forecast as well is how much you're going to owe at the end of the day, because it's all good to have a direct line of sight into customer base, but you also need to know how much it's going to cost you. So your variable costs as well as your fixed costs, of course, as most newcomers already know, these are the critical things that you need to establish if you're going to move on and create systems that actually work. but you also need to account for taxes. These are like one of those hidden things that you're going to get hit with a tax bill at the end of the year once you've actually established your revenue, and you're going to start to realize, oh no, this is going to cost me a lot more than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
And so these are kind of learnings that I've seen that really hit people really hard. The other thing that we talked about in previous episode, Dozy, is that business in Calgary specifically moves a little bit slower than most other jurisdictions. To establish relationships takes a little bit longer. The time to revenues takes a little bit longer. So as you think about your cash revenues, is that once you've actually submitted your invoice, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get paid in the next 30 days. It might be the next 60 days. So you just kind of want to consider and create a buffer for what you're going to actually need to succeed. I'm a big believer in the numbers game on this one. And I don't mean just numbers in terms of forecasts. I mean numbers as in you're going to have to de-risk your investment into your own entrepreneurial journey so that when you have direct line of sight, when you do have direct line of sight to your ideal customer profile, before you thought maybe you need 5, well, you actually need 15. You need to keep establishing as many people as you want, because you're de-risking your investment into your own entrepreneurial journey. So as you think about systems, you want to think about, before we started here, Dozy, I was talking about my entrepreneurial journey with my app, grantsease.ai. And one of the things that I wanted was to establish 50 beta testers. I got 20 beta testers. My actual initial goal is 10. So I doubled my initial goal. I got 20, which is, I think I'm going to have to work really hard to make sure that goes well. But those are the kind of things, the numbers that you want. You want to create as much buffers as possible, because if you're going to make this massive investment in yourself and your entrepreneurial journey, you just want to buffer as much as possible so that you can create systems that will help you to succeed. So create as much volume as possible in terms of ICP, approach them, do your customer discoveries, forecasts, understanding exactly who you're going to target, when you're going to break even, when you're going to hit revenues. Those are going to be absolutely critical components. And of course, establishing how much you're going to need in terms of how much you're going to have to pay the tax man, because those are always huge surprises, especially as newcomers come to Canada and establish their own, areas. So I'm going to stop there because I think that that's plenty, but I think that those are the biggest systems ideas that I want to impart on people.
Yeah, I like that actually, because I feel like why I really like what he says, because when people think about like what are the things or what are the systems I need to build to capture, like to account for, a lot of people think about the cost first, like, and which is like when someone probably heard you say runway, they start thinking of, okay, what I need in terms of salaries and stuff. But I really like how you flipped it, which is basically there's the revenue system you need to build, like how's money going to come in, and you need to account for that. Where's the customer coming from? Like, how are they going to pay? How long does it take for them to pay me? There's all that. There's the tax, like what does that mean in terms of just taxes, aside from just me just paying myself a salary or the cost of tools or what's the tax man going to take from me? So there's all that. There's the forecasting itself. So I really like that, honestly, because again, it's so easy to think about cost. Oh, okay, because and if you think about your startup, you're like, oh, I need to spend money on A, B, C, D, E. Where are you gonna get the money from? And then there's all this other thing you talk about, which is you need to de-risk yourself.
Yeah. And there's so many great tools to help people nowadays that are completely free. Notion is one that I use quite heavily, where it keeps me really organized. All my invoices are going out. When is my net 30? Like, there is just so many different tools that you can utilize. I use a lot of automations. Again, I'm not going to start to like nerd out about systems in terms of, because that could be a whole subject matter, like you said at the beginning. But there's just so many different free and low code, no code tools that you can just establish and then start hitting workflows that are on play. But I will tell you for certain is that at the end of the year, when it comes to taxes and paying back, whatever it might be that you need to owe, or establishing exactly what your forecasts are, you're going to need to have a really good idea of exactly how much you brought in so that you can project and forecast for the next year.
Yeah. That there's that too. Like, I'm learning that the hard way. Like, so aside from Notion, like I was just hoping you could kind of mention a couple of tools you for you, like what's Mina's tool stack like basically for as you're kicking off Grant Ease right now?
Yeah. So I created a ChatGPT project specifically in and around invoices. So essentially what I did was you go to ChatGPT, create a project. This is your invoice generator. So basically you've got your own personal assistant specifically in and around invoices. And why that's so important is because when you are establishing all these invoices that go out, they're going to need your logo, they're going to need all of the information that's going to be put on them. But now you've got a central repository of projects so that you can actually extract information from them at the end of the year as well. ChatGPT has gotten a lot better. So essentially, I've been using that a lot in terms of establishing invoices. And it's been absolutely wonderful. Makes my life so much easier. And then when it comes to tracking, so Notion is my key element. And to be completely honest with you, one of the biggest game changers that I've used recently was Perplexity came out with its own browser. It's called Comet. And I'm telling you right now, this is just the most incredible practical application of AI. We talk a lot about AI and systems and tools. AI web browsers are going to be the biggest change in everyone's lives in terms of workflows, because this is essentially how I would work. I would ask ChatGPT to establish the invoice. Then I would take that information, put it into the web browser, which is Perplexity. It's an AI assistant, and tell it, go into my Notion, fill this information out. You're done. So you've got the front end, back end, you're finished. Like, we're talking about hours of work. Now it's completely done in 10 minutes. And so it's just the tracking the habit of putting those through. And of course you can create automation so that each one can talk to each other. But for now, this is the way that I've been establishing things, and it's been quite remarkable. And now I can establish exactly what revenue structures are looking like and forecasting way better.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I mean, I've heard about Comet. I've just not used it, and all. I was like, oh, that's actually interesting. I could do that where it kind of helps connect what's happening to ChatGPT all the way down to your Notion document. I do also know that there are a ton of really good workflows on Notion. The ones people are selling, or free templates they build that way you just kind of just put data in. And with Notion AI now, I think like all those things will happen much, much faster. I'm making a huge jump right now with this question, which is culture. And I think that's interesting because I think as newcomers, it's a two-way street in the sense that you're also trying to understand the culture of the country while you're trying to build a culture in a business. And maybe you've hired one person or two people, and basically, and then you're growing fast at the same time. And so it's like, how do you manage all that? Decide what kind of culture you want in your business. I mean, they always say the culture is a picture of the CEO or the founder usually. So but kind of controlling that, while also trying to also integrate, while growing fast. Like, any thoughts on how to manage that?
I'll tell you what not to do.
That's a good start.
This is what I've noticed is that, entrepreneurs who are startups, who are coming to Canada, who are, they're a bit on eggshells. They basically don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They want to adapt to a certain culture. What ends up happening is that you've come with so much knowledge and experience that there's fundamental principles and really established ideas about how to conduct a business. I think that you need to take that and bring it to Canada, because I think Canada also needs to establish a little bit more of what we can learn from newcomers. So the reason why I say that, and the example that I'm going to tell you about what not to do is this, is that you come to Canada and you say, I'm going to create a flat structure so that when I do my first hire, my second hire, my third hire, they're going to have equity share in my company. They're going to be able to have equal voice in terms of decision making. That doesn't work. I'm telling you right now, it does not work. Even folks who want to build up their, first business development director or first CTO, it is such a difficult process that what I would really impart in terms of advice, or at least that I've seen, this is my own biased perspective, is that you need to bring your own hierarchical structure of what you've seen in the past and what does work, and establish frameworks for who's responsible for what the swim lanes are. And create a little bit more of a structure to your entrepreneurial journey than you might think is necessary. A lot of folks say, hey, we're going to be quick, we're going to be iterative, we're going to be San Francisco, we're going to yeah, there is that. But if nobody understands what it is you're trying to sell, what your vision is, how can people get behind you? And that's the biggest thing that I've seen is that over and over again, newcomers, first-time entrepreneurs will bring on a senior business development director who has 20 years of experience, and they'll pay them a very good salary, and they'll say, "This is my first hire." They're going to just, expedite my growth. The challenge is that this person who's for the most part understands systems. They understand, okay, so this is my role, this is your role. They've kind of worked in big corporations and have done it before. They've probably worked with medium-sized startups. These kind of folks also need to establish some kind of a working relationship with these folks, so that when you are creating that culture is open, it's transparent, but it's also documented in a hierarchical structure that it does work for everyone, so that it's not always after the fact where it's like, oh no, we didn't want this customer, I don't know if we can deliver on this. These are the kind of things that you want to avoid. So what I would say is, even though I'm a very kind of like fast paced, let's kind of try to figure things out and go to market quickly, I would also say that once you've actually established, hey, I'm going to have my first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hires, is that, look, whether you like it or not, you're the CEO, you're the face of the company, you're going to have to own that. And you're going to have to own the fact that you're going to have people reporting up to you. And these are the established criteria of what they need to deliver. And if they don't deliver, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And especially for newcomers, I really want folks to understand this, is that the first few hires are going to be super important to get right, which means that you're going to have to let go of a lot of people too. There's no hard feelings there. This is just the way that it is. But, getting the right hire right is so critically important. Don't always think about the people that you interact with on a daily basis. You want to think about folks who might be outside or adjacent to your established network. Those are the kind of people who will bring diversity of thought, bring connections that are critical and needed, get you into markets that you wouldn't have established otherwise. So you just kind of want to establish the fact that, hey, each one is going to have a run of exactly what the responsibilities are. Equity agreements are going to be critical. Again, first few hires, equity is going to be your leverage to bring people on, because it's probably not going to be through salaries. You got to get those things right. It's not going to be 50-50. Okay. It's not going to be 50-50. It's just, I don't know how many times I have to say that, but it's one of those things where if you get this right, then you're in a much better position. But I'm really happy that I get to, talk about how every time that someone thinks that, establishing a 50-50 is going to be really great right off the bat, it's not. It never is. What you want to think about is key deliverables up to a 50-50, so that if they hit certain milestones, then you can establish that 50-50 later on. But you want to kind of consider how you're going to establish that trust and openness, but also establish the fact that, you are at the end of the day hierarchical structure where you're going to be making the decisions at the end of the day.
Why I like what you said is that we like to pretend that that's not so. But the truth is that no matter how much you talk about flat structures, no structure is really flat. That's the real truth. I mean, it's a good thing to write about in TechCrunch and all the other stuff, but there's no flat structure. There's none. I've worked in startups in San Francisco, I've worked in Canada here, and there's no flat structure. There's an order in which everything is designed, and yes, it can look flat because everyone. So I think what people mistake flat structure for being open and transparent and having respect for each other. So there's no bullying. Doesn't mean that there's no hierarchy. I think it's so easy for people to somehow mistake that, because we say, oh, it's a flat structure. No, it just basically means that I can walk up to the CEO and have a conversation with him. But I still can't just go to the CEO and say, there's some things I will know I can't do. No matter how much they say it, you kind of go through a certain line. You jump over some people's heads, you're going to make some people, you're going to spoil certain things or cause issues. So I think so it's okay. I like that, because we tend to tiptoe around that a bit. It's really no flat structure. Like it's, I don't think there's really any flat where everyone just there's no line of sight. Like, I don't know. It's really a contentious topic when you take it out, but that's what I think, honestly.
I came across the notion of ad hoc. So ad hoc, archicy. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't have an established structure, then someone will come to you with an outlier, something that is outside your sphere of policies and procedures, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to ad hoc try to figure out what to do with these situations. And of course, whatever, that's business, that's normal. But if you don't establish a hierarchy, who's going to make the decisions on those specific outliers? So you definitely need to have who's going to be making the decisions on each one of those specific situations. And honestly, the people who've established their startups in such a great way are the ones who've decided that, hey, we're going to have a cliff is what it's called, where you're going to say each time you hit a milestone, you're going to have larger equity say, you're going to have larger voting rights, all those kind of things. So, it's a meritocracy in that respect, but there's still an established framework for who's making the final decisions. And it just creates, I like the way that you put it, right? Like, there is no such thing as a hierarchy. Someone's going to have to make the decision at the end of the day. Let's just try to create transparency around it and move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think we're rounding up, so I probably just have two questions. And I think the first one is basically, what's the biggest operational mistake you see that killed startups, especially newcomer startups?
So there's a lot of factors that go into startups. You have to be at the right time, the right place. Those are the kind of things that you can have the best product in the world, but again, if it's not the right time for that product to go to market, then it's going to be kind of dead in the water. So if you're lucky enough to be at the right time, at the right place, then the biggest thing that I've noticed that kills startups is back to what we were talking about earlier, is the runway. The longer that you stay in the game, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, the likelihood of you getting lucky and getting the right time and getting the right place is much higher. So that's why I'm so adamant about creating good forecasts and good systems, is because if the longer that you stay in the game, the more that you're going to learn, the more that you're going to pivot, the more that you're going to be successful. So that's the biggest thing. Folks who give up really quickly are the ones who are going to have that, the pride of, I got rejected again, and this didn't really work out. So it's, how many punches you can take, as Tyson mentioned, right? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you can outlast, I think that is the biggest determinant of success. Yeah.
I mean, I think the interesting part of that is, like, so when do you know that it's not working?
There is an established framework that I use, which is you've got your go-to-market strategy, you've gone out to market, and you've tried different experiments. So I don't want to give away too much, but I've had this company that I worked with where it was an events planning logistics software, and it was really great. It works really wonderfully. Went to market and provided that service out to wedding planners. The wedding planner said, no thanks, we do our own thing. Then you went ahead and established that amongst funeral directors, and they said, no thanks, we've got our own CRM, we've got our own systems. And then you went out and you talked to every single person across the board. And when the market tells you that your particular product isn't quite right for us right now, then at a certain point, if you've done the right experiments and you've really gone to work trying to establish yourself within all those industries, all those verticals, then you know that something's got to give here. Maybe it's the value proposition. And again, if you've been doing the right customer discoveries during that process of when you're talking to people and getting beyond the politeness, then you know that, hey, there's no product market fit here. That's okay. Let's move on to the next thing.
I like that you went back to the politeness, because I mean, like, that's super important. I feel like we need to have that conversation a ton more in Canada. Like, can we find a way to go beyond the politeness and just get the truth out? Last question, I think it's a great place to end this, which is grant ease, 20 beta testers, all that. Like, how are you thinking of hiring? Like, what's your hire? Like, if you had to hire your first employee rather, or contractor, like, give me, because I mean, I find that these days hiring could mean a couple of things. First freelancer that's going to help you solve something. First contractor or first employee. What's the framework you be thinking of? One, for hiring that person. Two, what are the things that you see? What are the triggers that will tell you, okay, I think it's time to kind of get one person on board or two people on board?
Yeah, great question. I want to establish maybe the context. I built Grant Ease on a no-code tool called Lovable.dev.
Yeah.
I'm not technical myself at all. I kind of strung it together using no-code tools. With that, I've been able to get a product out to market, establish that it works, and right now we're going through the beta testers to establish edge cases and understand exactly what the limitations of this particular product is, which is great. The next step, without a doubt, is going to hire developers, and most likely, everyone talks about full stack developers, but essentially what I'm looking for is someone who's got that multifaceted idea of understanding, what exactly it is that I built, and understands the context behind it, but also understands the technical capabilities and constraints behind it. Whether or not I have to build a brand new tool from scratch or not will have to be established in the future. But for now, what I'm looking towards in terms of direct line of sight, no question for anybody who's building no code solutions, is the scalability behind those particular products is not quite there yet. So understanding that those are going to be the constraints, and that's probably going to be my first hire, someone who understands, like really, really understands, not the full dev stuff. I think that that's actually secondary, but more importantly, what does no code tools look like when people like myself are building? Like, that's a really interesting dynamic. And I'm glad you brought it up, Dozy, is that there's a skill set that I think is certainly going to be in incredibly high demand, which is folks who understand the no code, low code mess and understand how to clean that up. I think, I, amongst a lot of other people on TikTok and other YouTube, we've all kind of understood that this is going to be the market. It's not going to be your full stack developer who understands all the intricacies and expertise in terms of the computer engineering, but rather the mess that no code has.
Yeah, because I'm also building something with my co-founder and the Newcomers. Like, he's building something called Slice, and I think one big question I'm always asking is, there's some, I hope you're kind of noting all this down, because at some point you're going to have to kind of face either, do I scale or do I move this from a no code function to hard code it, But I think the other big thing I hear you say here is that it's almost like, think hiring, there's no one answer. There's more like, what's the next problem I think I'm going to solve? And then I need to find someone to help me solve that problem, basically. Because I feel like there's no, I have to hire a marketer next or a BD next. It's more like, I'm here right now, and when I've done my forecast and I've built up my systems. Maybe with how my systems are set up, I need the finance person to come and help me wrangle some of all these numbers. Also, I go get a finance contractor, maybe I need a salesperson, so I go get someone in BD. But I think that's a good way to think of it, actually.
Absolutely. I'm personally a strong believer in the fractional services that people provide, where it's contractual obligations, but not for mission critical roles. So, for example, I wouldn't get someone who's a fractional and enter in something that's absolutely critical to my business, because they're never going to know as much, and they're always going to be fractional at the end of the day. But you do want to have those folks on speed dial, whether it's a CTO or a finance person, like you mentioned before. You're absolutely right. It is the next big thing to fix and understand exactly how to get there. And there's some really great networks beyond Fiverr, where you can actually find really interesting folks that are in your network that could potentially really help you. So I'm a big believer in the fractional services.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dozy. Thank you for doing all of this and putting this all together. I really appreciate all your work.
Oh, thanks. It's episode 5. We're done, people.